Alright, guys, as promised, here is chapter 11 of Gregor. I was finishing up, I was in the middle of a page, so I'm just going to reread that one. On long voyages, we cannot carry enough fuel to provide light, so we hire shiners to aid us, said Marith. They should be here directly. Yes, see, here they come now. Gregor looked out into the dark and spotted 2 points of light. They went out, then turned on again, this time closer. As the flickering light continued to approach, he could make out the forms of flying insects. By the time the 2 giant bugs had landed on the bows of the boats, he had identified them. "Oh, they're fireflies," he said. Back at his dad's family farm in Virginia, they flew at the edges of the woods at night. Their little twinkling lights made the whole place look magical. The 3-foot-tall versions perched on the boat weren't nearly so enchanting, but he had to admit that when their butts lit up, they put out some light. "Greetings, shiners," said Marith with a bow. "Greetings, all," one of the fireflies said in a high and impossibly whiny voice. "I am he called Photos Glow, and she is Zap." It was my turn to make the introduction, wailed Zap. "Photos Glow made it last time. But we both know that, as a male, I am more visually pleasing to humans," said Photos Glow, his rear end blinking in a variety of colors. "Zap can only make one color, and it is yellow." "I hate you," shrieked Zap, and Gregor knew this was going to be the longest trip of his life. Gregor had never bitten his nails before, but he started doing it about 5 minutes after the fireflies arrived. They were unbelievable. They argued about where they would sit. They argued about who should take the first shift. They even argued about whose servant Temp should be, since he was obviously just a no-account crawler, until the roach spoke up with such uncharacteristic force. "Only the princess Temp serves, only the princess." Marith tried to feed them to distract them, but they just bickered about each other's table manners. "Must you talk with your mouth full, Zap?" Photosglogo said. "It kills my appetite." "This from someone who just sat in his milk?" Zap said, and apparently she had him there, because his rear end went bright red in anger, and he chomped on a mushroom in silence for at least 30 seconds. "Are they always like this?" Gregor whispered to Marith. "In truth, these 2 are not as bad as some of the others I had traveled with," whispered back Marith. "I once saw a pair try to fight to the death over a piece of cake." "Try to?" said Gregor. "They're not very capable fighters, and they tire quickly, so they end up accusing each other of cheating and giving up. Then they sulk for several days," said Marith. "Do we really need them?" asked Gregor. "Unfortunately, yes," said Marith. Even Boots, who had stationed herself on the floor of the boat to roll a ball around with Temp, seemed aggravated by the newcomers. "Fofo, too loud," she said, tugging on one of the wings. "Shh, Fofo." "Fofo? I am he called Photos Glow, and will answer to no other name." "She's just a little kid. She can't say Photos Glow," said Gregor. "Well, then, I cannot understand her," said the firefly. "Allow me to translate," Twitch-Tip said, not even bothering to move. "She said that if you don't stop your incessant babble, the big rat sitting in the boat next to you will rip your head off." The silence that followed was blissful. Gregor felt positively friendly toward Twitch-Tip, and decided he wouldn't mind riding in her boat at all. They were far out into the waterway now. The torches had been extinguished when the shiners arrived, and its glow only illuminated the immediate area. Gregor snapped on his best flashlight for a minute and shone it around. All signs of land had vanished. There were waves, too, now, and even a decent breeze. Marith and Howard ran silken sails up the mast and were preoccupied with steering the other 2 vessels. Their bats settled comfortably together and dozed off. Gregor noticed that Aries didn't join them. On the first quest, the bats had gathered in a clump to sleep together after flights, but maybe Aries wasn't welcome now. "Hey, Aries, do you know how long it will take to get to the labyrinth in this boat?" asked Gregor. "At least 5 days," said Aries. "If we flew, we could make it in less time, but it was believed that very few bats could make the journey. No one has ever tried it." "I bet you could make it," said Gregor. He meant it, too. He hadn't chosen Aries just because he was a troublemaker. The bat was also impressively strong and swift. "I thought that I might try it some day to see if I could accomplish it," admitted Aries. "Like Lindbergh. He's the first guy who flew across the Atlantic Ocean by himself," said Gregor. "He had wings?" "Well, mechanical ones. He was a person. He had a plane. That's a machine that flies. Now people fly across the ocean all the time in big, great planes, but not what Lindbergh was flying," said Gregor. "He's famous in the overland?" asked Aries. "Yeah, I mean, he was. He's dead now, but he was real famous. People were mad at him, too, because of something about a war," Gregor said, unsure about that part. "There was a sad thing, too, about a baby, but he couldn't remember that exactly either." Gregor picked up the scroll with the prophecy of Bane and opened it. Die the baby, die his heart, die his most essential part. He let the scroll snap shut. He looked at Boots, who was quietly singing Row, row, row your boat while she drummed on Temp's shell. She was so perfect, somehow, in that way little kids are perfect. So innocent. How could anyone think they were going to solve anything by killing her? And yet, at this moment, Gregor knew squads of rats were scouring the underland to do just that. Can rats swim? Gregor asked, peering out into the water. Yes, but not as far out as we are. The rats cannot reach her there, said Ares, following his thoughts. But eventually they would have to land, and there would be Bane. Have you ever killed a rat? Asked Gregor. Not alone. Together with Henry, yes. I flew while he held the sword, said Ares. Then Gregor remembered he had seen the rat Fanger die on Henry's sword, back on the crystal beach, but it was sort of a blur. How do you do it? I mean, where exactly is the best place to... Where do you stab it? The words felt strange in his mouth. The neck is vulnerable. The heart, but one must get past the ribs. Through the eyes to the brain, under the foreleg is a vein that bleeds greatly. If you strike the belly, you may not kill instantly, but the rat will likely die within days from infection, said Ares. I see, said Gregor. But he didn't. That is, he couldn't really see himself doing it. Killing the giant white rat. The whole thing was surreal. Is it okay if I'm riding you, or do I have to be on the ground, said Gregor. I will be there if it is all possible, said Ares. Thanks, said Gregor. Sorry I got you into this mess. You also freed me from one, said Ares, and they left it at that. Meredith called a dinner break and passed around the food. The fireflies ate with gusto, even though they had just been fed. After everyone had eaten, Meredith lowered the sails in his boat and hooked the front of his craft to the back of Howard's with a tow rope. Howard and I will take turns sailing the lead boat while the rest sleep, but we need someone on guard and one shiner on duty at all times. Zap will take the first shift, said Photos Glogo. My light requires more energy. It is a lie, howled Zap. I can only make one color, but the effort is the same. He only says this so that he will be given more food and less work. Photos Glow will take the first shift, said Twitch Tip, or I'll shred his wings into ribbons. So that settled it. Who wants to watch with them? We are so many and can switch guards every 2 hours or so, said Meredith. Gregor was wiped out, but he hated the idea of being woken up after an hour or two of sleep and then having to be on guard, so he volunteered to go first. In the lead boat, Howard took his place by the rudder to steer. His bat folded his wings to sleep. Twitch Tip, who had barely moved since they left Regalia, closed her eyes. Zap's soft yellow light faded out, and she began to snore. Gregor took off Boots' life jacket, wrapped her snugly in a blanket, and settled down next to Temp in the stern of the boat. Ares perched next to him. Meredith stretched out on the floor, with Andromeda nearby. Photos Glow turned his bulb to a steady orange light and lit the POW a few feet in front of Meredith, illuminating the space between the boats. Gregor sat on a pile of supplies and laid his forearm across the side of the boat. It was quiet except for the lapping of waves, soft breathing, and firefly snores. The rocking of the boat had a hypnotic effect. His eyelids felt leaden. He barely slept in days. The rats were after Boots. Maybe he could just rest his head on his shoulder. He had to kill Rip Red. No, the Bane. He had to kill the Bane. How many nights had he been down here? He had to kill somebody. Boots' little hand was wrapping around his wrist. What, Boots? He murmured. She was squeezing him hard. What, you need a blankie? He turned to pull his arm away. Her fingers dug deeper, creeping up on his arm, causing real pain. Gregor's eyes flew open. Boots was sleeping peacefully next to Temp, yards away. He twisted his head to the side. Curled around his forearm was a slimy red tentacle. Oh boy. All right, that was chapter 11.